Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Grace, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm a little bit sad that the sun has gone. It was gorgeous yesterday and it's now tipping down. So I'm a little bit sad, but otherwise all good. But let me give everyone 30 seconds to jump in and then we will kick straight off. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping while everyone joins, but this is the third, I was going to say second, the third of our expert fireside sessions where we are having four firms come in and reveal the secrets behind their growth. I'm Kaylee Graham, Head of Partnerships and Growth here at Telaroo. Last week, we were joined by Andrew Turpin, who is the partner for the VFO service line at PEM. And he talked all about launching new services and the growth of their VFO offering. But before I let today's guest introduce you, a couple of other bits. There is a Q&A box. Please do pop any questions in there. The chat is also open, so please do share your thoughts. Agree with us, disagree with us, just no heckling, please. And last but not least, we have one more session after today's, which will be on the 28th of May at 4 p.m. And that will be with Ariona, who is the Managing Director of Majors Accountancy. So without further ado, let's dive in. We have Grace Hardy, who is founder of Hardy Accounting, host of the soon-to-be-released Unconventional podcast, and an all-round social media star. Grace, would you like to introduce yourself?
You're so sweet. You've done such a good job already. I don't know what else there is to say. I'm Grace Hardy, and I got into the accounting world because I did an apprenticeship at 18 off the back of sixth form. I was there for 3 years and then I quit, left, started my business sort of as a joke because I really wanted to go to Bali, but it was rainy season, so I couldn't. And now fast forward just after 6 months, and here I am now.
Amazing. Thank you very much. The whole theme of today is very much growth. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll for everyone that's here just to find out if growth is a top priority for their firms at the moment. But while people are answering that, let's talk about that career journey so far. Let's start with the apprenticeship. What made you go and get an apprenticeship in the first place? Why not uni? Why not just a job?
So for me personally, I am very, very dyslexic, and so I always knew that I didn't want to go to university. I also didn't want to live the uni life. It wasn't really something that interested me, and so I wasn't quite sure what else was out there because I went to a school where it was uni or you're a failure, basically. And my mum was a training provider for an apprenticeship in the NHS. So she said to me, "Have you thought of an apprenticeship?" And very naively at the time, I thought, "Oh my God, I thought you could only do apprenticeships in like hairdressing and construction. I didn't realize you could do them in finance, solicitor apprenticeships, doctor apprenticeships, teacher apprenticeships. Had no idea it was such a big world out there." And for my mum, it was very important that I got some sort of qualification or degree. So she didn't want me to go straight into a job. She was like, "You need something other than A levels, but you don't have to go to university." And so I started researching them, and they come with so many benefits. Like you get paid, and you get paid to learn, and they pay for your qualification and for your degree. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is sort of a no-brainer. So that's when I started applying to them.
I had a very similar experience myself at college, was like, I don't want to do this. But my parents were also of the opinion that just going and getting a job was not an option. So I feel you on that one. Apprenticeship, assumingly went pretty well, and then you made the decision to leave and start out on your own. I know you say it was a little bit of a joke, you wanted to go traveling, but why actually start out on your own? Why not just stick out the job that you had until you could go and travel?
Um, for me, words and actions always have to match up. And so at the time, I felt a bit stuck. As an apprentice, it's quite difficult to get promoted. And when you do get promoted, sometimes it's quite difficult to sort of navigate that. From the age of 18, 19, I was training graduates, and sometimes you would have a lot of backlash or like bad things said to you because they don't understand why an 18-year-old girl is training them when they've come from university. And it's a bit of a weird power thing, which is a bit bizarre. And it got to the end of 3 years. And for me, I was just a bit bored. I've been doing the same thing for 3 years. And by the age of 19, I had my own portfolio of clients. And so I was like, I don't want to get sort of stuck here because very easily, like 20 years can happen and I'll still be doing the same job. Yeah, I might have more responsibility, but it is the same thing over and over and over again. And I always knew I wanted to be self employed when I was younger. But I didn't know what to sort of do it in because I didn't have any sort of very unique gifts or talents or anything that really clicked in my head. And then I went, oh yeah, I'm a qualified accountant. Why don't I just sort of try that out and see how it goes?
Love it. It's very impressive, if nothing else. But 100% of people on here saying that yes, growth is either their main objective or that it's super important amongst some other priorities, which is great to hear and great that they're all here. But you starting out on your own then, how did you first go about getting clients? I imagine that quitting and then going, I now need some clients is a pretty scary position to be in. So how did you go about getting those first ones?
So I was actually very confused, to be honest, when I was like, okay, I need to get clients, because it is the question of where do I find clients? Because you can't really, you can go network and that sort of stuff. But when I went to networking events, it was almost like everyone was trying to sell to you and you were also trying to sell to them. And it just ended up being a weird thing where you actually don't really get a lot out of it. And you can have a website and things, and you can give out leaflets in the street and all that sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, like, you don't know if those people are actually looking for an accountant. So the first thing I did was I shouted about it from my windows, via social media. So I set up a TikTok and an Instagram and a LinkedIn, and I thought my niche personally is young business owners. And so then I thought, where are those young business owners? 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be wandering the street because they're very busy people. And especially Gen Z don't really go down the high street anymore. So it's not somewhere where they're going to be, but they will be on social media because that's how they promote their businesses. So that is where I started to collect my clients.
Amazing. Now, you have, I think it's fair to say, documented your journey very honestly online. I
To
guess
say the least.
honest is the word we're going to go for. I encourage everyone to go and check out your TikTok, etc., for I guess, a breakdown of what honest means. But why have you been so open online?
I think for me, it's really important when someone sees me online and that they meet me in person. It's sort of the same thing, like it's the same person, same sort of vibe, and everyone's like, oh, that's Grace. Because I think the worst thing you can do in business or in life is pretend to be someone that you're not. For me, I'm a very honest, chatty, opinionated, emotional person in real life. And so it's important that obviously not all of it goes on social media because there's privacy, there's life, there's things I don't want to talk about online. However, it's also important to be relatable, I think, is probably the main thing. And nowadays people buy from emotions and personality, and that's why it's so important for me to like build my personal brand, so to speak, on social media, and show those lows of me crying in my car. Because like everyone's been there, like everyone's had those really bad days. And do you know what? 9 times out of 10, people don't want to show that because they think that they're going to be judged or something horrific's going to happen. But at the end of the day, we've all been there. And it's important to show not like just business growth, but also personal development growth as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think you were at Accountex, I was talking about it at one point around the fact that actually what we often do is we put out things where we're like, we are a such and such business and this is what we do, and I'm a chartered accountant and I've done this and I've done that, and actually what we're not getting is a lot of that authenticity and that personality.
Mm.
And I think that's something that your social media has definitely allowed you to do, right?
100%. And your talk was so amazing anyway. But I think that was really, really important because, especially from an external point of view, as accountants, we all know sort of what we do, and that's fine. But from an external point of view, which I didn't realize until I sort of took a step back from my social media strategy, which at the beginning was terrible, is that people find accountants quite scary. And I have this conversation with my clients a lot that they sort of like put us all on a pedestal because we know lots of things about tax and things that they don't know. So we're sort of seen as like sort of scary, and clients are, especially young clients, are scared to approach us if we just put on this shiny front because they can't relate to us. We feel like we might speak down to them, we might be condescending or just a bit rude to the fact that they don't really know anything, because they don't, because it's not taught at schools, which is a massive issue anyway. And so it's important when I'm relatable on TikTok for people feel like they can ask me questions and they're not going to be judged. And I think not being judged is such an important factor when picking an accountant.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more. Of that 100% of people that said growth is important, I'm going to ask a follow-up question, which is how people are intending to achieve that new growth. Is it through attracting new clients? Is it fee increases? Is it upselling new services, acquisitions? What is it that you're doing to try and create that growth? But talking about your social media a little bit more, how do you deal with those people online that don't think you're ready, that have negative things to say about you? How have you dealt with that?
I think, as we can all see, just from a cheeky scroll in my TikTok comments or by looking on my Instagram story where I love sharing the highlights of the awful TikTok comments, is that they're actually quite terrible. And I've had videos go, you can call it the wrong side of TikTok, where my mum has called me and gone, Grace, I've seen a couple of things online. Are you all right? And I go, yes, I'm absolutely fine, but thank you for checking up on me. For me personally, I know that they're all males. If you go look at it, they're all young men, all really old men, sort of one or the other. And it just comes from a place of jealousy. A lot of people say you're too young, you aren't qualified, you aren't this, you aren't that, or your dad's money, etc., etc. But they don't know anything about me or my situation. I was very lucky in the fact that I saved up a lot of money during my apprenticeship, and I was actually paid a very decent salary for my age. So I was able to use those savings to start my business. And I am qualified, otherwise I wouldn't be where I am or have lots of fancy letters after my name. And my clients are happy with my services, and I'm building a very sprouting little firm. And so I'm very happy and I'm over the moon. So for me personally, those comments don't mean anything because none of them are actually true. If anything, it just boosts my engagement. So can't complain.
Precisely. In terms of how people are intending to achieve that growth, we've got 67% wanting to attract new clients and 33% upselling clients to new services, which is super exciting. I want to touch a little bit more on what you said about your social media strategy or lack thereof at the start. But what I do want to find out is what channels the audience are using to market their firm at the moment. So I'm going to pop that out. But what did your social strategy look like at the start, and how has that evolved since?
It looked terrible. So what it looked like at the beginning, I just started on Instagram. So it looked like me explaining a bunch of things that the average person wouldn't understand anyway. So I was like talking about payments on accounts and like financial plans and stuff like that. And it was all sort of too high level. And so again, this is when I talked about needing to take a step back. Because at the end of the day, like my clients are young, they don't know what a payment on account is. So they're not going to read that post and they're not going to engage with it because they're not bothered by it. They don't think it's applicable to them. So I started really stripping it back and talking about allowances, dividend allowance, interest allowance, personal allowance, talking about really, really, really basic things that all accountants really take for granted because we know it like the back of our hand. But we really forget that the average person doesn't understand that word or phrase whatsoever. And it's things like explaining what is actually a business expense, what are types of business expenses, things like that, that again, we take for granted, but the average person doesn't know or doesn't understand. And that's when my social media started doing well. So the videos that have got the most engagement, likes on Instagram and on TikTok have been me explaining really, really simple, like bits about tax, explaining tax brackets or things so you can pay less tax, which is me just explaining what allowances are. Those super basic things are what do well because people want to learn. You either go on social media to be educated or to be entertained.
100%. I think that is such a key piece, right? There is this huge misconception that because we're in the space and we understand these things, that this is common knowledge and everyone understands it. And actually, like you say, there are so many people out there that don't fundamentally understand the basics of what's on their payslip, what an allowance is, how tax is calculated, all of those kind of things. So I think, like you say, I think sometimes it can feel really obvious to talk about those things. And so we avoid it, but actually they're the things that people care about. They're the things that people want to hear about. I quite often go on accountants' websites and there will be this big old list of services. And I'm looking at it thinking most business owners don't have a clue what any of those are. And it's that like switch of mindset, isn't it? From here's what the service is, what I can sell you, to actually here's the problem I'm going to solve for you, or here's something you didn't know that's going to actually engage people.
And it's also stuff like self-assessments are really basic, but some people actually don't know that word. They use like tax return instead. Obviously, it's a self-assessment tax return, but we use abbreviations and things. And also, sometimes people don't know when they need to do one. So they don't know if they earn over a certain amount through pay as you earn, then you need to do one. They don't know if you've gone over £1,000, you might not need to pay any tax, but you still need to do one. It's stuff like that where people aren't educated. And so when you point that out to them, they go, oh my God, I learned something from Grace's TikTok. Maybe I'm going to ask her a question. Oh, and then she can do my tax return. And that's sort of how you gain clients off of social media.
Absolutely. If we look at the channels people are using, we've got 83% of people saying they want to be using social media, or they are using social media at the moment, which is great to see. I think what will be interesting is if I pop out the next question, which is actually what platforms are they using? And I think this is going to be really interesting to see what things people are using. I think LinkedIn's going to be a big one. And actually, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day who said they'd put a lot of money into LinkedIn only to discover that their ideal clients aren't on LinkedIn. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, right, about thinking about where the clients that you want are actually hanging out and putting the content in those places for them.
Of course, and like LinkedIn and Facebook will be great platforms for some firms and they will make so much sense. And that's why you'll get the majority of your clients. For me personally, that's just not where they are. I like posting on LinkedIn because I like making a good network around me. Um, However, I know my clients aren't on LinkedIn because they don't even know how it works. They're on Instagram and they're on TikTok. So that's where I focus most of my energy.
And I think that's the point, right? I think if we think about some of like the negative things that have been said about you, I think not even just yourself, but a lot of the other accountants that are posting on TikTok, there is this like negative connotation of, oh, it's another accountant dancing around on TikTok, or oh, it's another accountant doing this. But like, this is where I think people forget that there is a strategy behind this, which is that's where my clients are. And so it makes sense for me to be there. And actually, if they're not the clients you're after, then fine, go to the platform where they're going to be, right? But I think people are dismissive of certain platforms because that's not where their clients are, and they're forgetting that other people's ideal clients are in those places.
And I think that's really important. And also not spreading yourself too thin. Like I post quite regularly on all social media platforms. And as we all know, it takes up a lot of time. It's not super easy all of the time to come up with content ideas and shoot them and do XYZ with them. And so if you know that your client is only on maybe one or two platforms, and just focus on those two and don't bother about the rest of them. I use three personally, and that can sometimes be too much. And sometimes I just won't post for a week on Instagram because I can't keep up with it. But it's also like important to note that you don't have to post all the time if you don't want to. You're more likely to gain followers quicker if you do. And if you post, like I post, for example, 3 times a day on TikTok, just because usually one of those videos will do well at some point, and that will give me more clients and more followers and more engagement. But if it doesn't work for you, then don't do it because it is a lot of time. But for me, the ROI is significant. And so that's why I do it.
Exactly that. I think one thing that comes up quite a lot is that people go, I'm too busy to do it.
Yeah.
I think actually it's okay to be busy, but I think part of it is how you view it from a mindset perspective, right? For you, social media isn't just this is a bit of fun, you're doing it because there is an ROI, because that's where you're getting new clients from. And I think that's the important part, right? Is that this falls under business development activity, not just fun time, right? And I think that's the important thing is people need to think about this as a legitimate part of their new business strategy. And that I think very much changes the mindset around it from it being a nice to have that you can get rid of into something that you're going to actively put time and thought into.
Of course. And like that's so important. And if it's not applicable to you, then don't feel like you have to spend time on it. But if you do, like I can genuinely think it can get you amazing results. Like 6 months ago, like I was a nobody. Like I really wasn't doing a lot. I was just like, oh yeah, the social media thing will be good. And now, like 6 months down the line, like I've been able to be on amazing podcasts and like do this webinar with you. I meet so many lovely, oh God, I can't speak, other lovely people in the industry just because of social media. Like that lunch that you hosted, I was so nervous to go to because I didn't know anyone. And Bev Flanagan and Joe Wood were there, and like I've looked up to them in the industry quite a lot. And I was like really nervous to like introduce myself. But because of social media, they already knew who I was, which was crazy to me. They were like, "You're Grace Hardy," and I was like, "Yes, I am." How do you know who I am? But it's because they've been following me on TikTok, which is crazy.
Absolutely. So if we look at the platforms people are using, we've got a mix there: Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Instagram. LinkedIn, definitely the highest one there, which I think is really interesting because it's potentially reflective of where their clients are, right? But I'd be keen to know, and feel free to share in the chat, anyone, how successful that's been for you, if you're thinking about introducing any new ones, etc. Because I think times are changing, right? People are moving away from certain platforms, looking to others. So I think it'd be interesting to see if people are seeing a decline in success there, if they're seeing real success in other areas. But I think if we look at all of the accounting conferences, we look at the talks that are being put on, social media, personal branding is becoming more and more prevalent. They're putting on more and more panels. There's much more conversation about it. And yet lots of people are still really, really nervous about posting. What would be your, I guess, your tips for getting started? How do you break through that?
I think even when I started, I was utterly terrified of posting my face online just because I know I look like such a baby and I knew that would be the comments straight away. And so it is scary. I was terrified. I don't find it very natural now. I hate doing it, but I've gotten a lot better at it. So always like practice makes perfect. So, and also it's important to note that anything you put on social media doesn't have to be perfect. You can sit there and record a video 20 times and it won't be what you want it to be. But as long as the information is accurate, then it's just important to just get it out there and start somewhere, because the hardest thing to do is start. Like that part is so scary. And then once you get started, it's so much easier. I remember I went to Accountex North last year and there was a panel with Rachel Harris, Ashley Leeds, Francesca from Cloud Accounting, and Stuart Hurst. And they were talking about social media and how easy it was for them to come up with content ideas. And they have a notes page in their phone and they just get these ideas all the time. And I was sat in the audience. I just started Instagram at that point going, how are they getting content ideas? Because I have to sit for hours and think about it because nothing comes to my head. And sometimes that's the hardest bit of thinking, what do I actually want to post? And now they're right. Like now I do get ideas in my head. And that's amazing because I never thought that would happen in a million years. But it's just starting somewhere and also having a look at what other people are doing. Like you can look at someone on social media and not steal their ideas, but go, I like what they're talking about. How can I put my own personal spin on that? And that's always a good place to start. It's like see what's doing well for other accountants and start there.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think part of it is, like you say, it's just getting started, it's just posting it. And once you've got a little bit of traction, then those things will start to come and you'll start to come up with ideas. And I think the other thing that works quite well for me when I'm thinking about kind of things that I can post is thinking about the questions that people ask me. And naturally, you guys have clients, you have clients that are asking you questions all the time, right? Same as we do. And actually, I think that's often a really great place to start because chances are if one of your clients is asking that question, at least two others are probably thinking it, right? So that's like a great place in terms of putting that stuff out and saying, hey, a client asked me this, here's the answer to it. And I think that also builds that credibility and also just the reps, right? The more you do it, I think the easier it gets. And you maybe don't completely get rid of that fear and that little bit of nervousness, but you kind of get into the mindset of just post it. What's the worst that's going to happen?
I agree. And also, a good thing to note is you don't always have to put your face online. Like, if you want to start TikTok, but you don't really want to start with talking videos per se, you can just do slideshows. That's what a lot of my TikToks are. And so I just do like pictures of places I've been with text over the top. And again, you can do the same on Instagram. You can make slideshows and carousels on there. So it's always a good place to start if you don't want to put your face online.
Definitely. I think one of the questions that comes up quite a lot when I talk to people about social media is, okay, I've done the content, then what happens? With your kind of experience, what is typically happening? Are people viewing content and then messaging you? Are they being directed to a website? What does that kind of journey look like for someone to then become a client?
For me, I know personally I need to work on it. I'm very much too relaxed. So I will post a video. Usually they will then go to my Instagram and then send me a DM, or they'll send me a DM on TikTok. Then I always have a free consultation call with every prospective client. And then from there, we onboard if that's what they would like to go through with. It's definitely something I need to work on because it's not very streamlined and there's always rooms for improvement everywhere. But like things like landing pages and stuff that I need to look into because it's not very my social media is very relaxed. It's not very salesy, it's more informative. And if you come across something you think is applicable to you and you want to reach out, then that's your choice. I don't sort of chuck things down people's throats and go, you must hire me as your accountant, because that it feels too pressurized for me and that's not really the person that I am. But definitely hints of that with more calls to action I've just started implementing now.
100%. I think that's exactly what I wanted to ask you, right? Because I think some of the stuff that we do see out there is like, looking for an accountant, call us.
Yeah.
And I do sometimes think, actually, how many business owners wake up and go, do you know what? I really need a new accountant today, right? It's that thing of actually, unless there's you need a push or a pull. So either something has to have gone horribly wrong with their current accountant and they're like, right, I need to leave and find something else.
Yeah.
They need a pull. And I think with your stuff, it's very much a pull. It's you being really informative. It's putting lots of effectively free like content and information out there for them to absorb and then go, wow, okay, I've built up some trust here. This feels like someone that I can maybe relate to. Let's have that conversation. I think that's part of what's made you so successful in that area, is that people are feeling drawn towards you as opposed to you trying to secretly pull them over.
Exactly, but I think it's also important to note it's a psychology thing. You have to see someone 7 times to trust them or something like that. And so that's the beauty of TikTok, is because of the algorithm. If someone likes one of my videos or comments on them, it will usually come up again and again and again until they follow me or something. And so that's quite good as well. So they will be near those 7 points of interaction.
100% is how I first came across you. I think I saw one of your videos, was like, oh, cool, liked it, carried on scrolling, and then just saw you constantly, and I was like, right, okay, hi, Grace.
I keep seeing your face everywhere.
Literally, let's be friends. But exactly that. And I think that's really important because I talk to people quite a lot where we're having conversations about client retention, we're having conversations about growth. And I think if we go right back to the start where I said to people on this, how is it that you're intending to do that growth, right? It was either attract new clients or upsell existing clients. I think a huge part of that upsell to existing clients is them feeling like there's a relationship there, feeling like they trust you. And so whilst social media is great for new clients, I also think there's a huge part to be said there for existing clients, particularly where you're saying they're going to see your face really regularly. I think that's amazing, right? Rachel Harris does a thing where she's like, some people's clients see them once a quarter, once a year. My clients see me every day online. And it's exactly that thing, right? If they're seeing you constantly, they're hearing from you constantly, even if it's not one-to-one information, but they're constantly reminded that you're there, that you're supporting them. And when you then reach out and go, hey, we've noticed this, let's have a conversation about a new service that might help you or a problem that potentially we've identified, it doesn't feel like that awkward accountant-client relationship where you speak to them once a quarter. They're like, oh, I was actually just saw your face 5 minutes ago when I was scrolling. Yeah, great to hear from you and have that conversation. I think a lot of that is often overlooked, but it's actually really, really important.
I would totally agree, especially because all my clients follow me on Instagram and social media, and so they can see what I'm up to. So they know when I'm on holiday, and they'll go, hey, I've got a question, but I saw you're on holiday, so like don't feel like you need to reply to this. Or I'll jump on a call with them and they literally went, oh, Tenerife looked lovely, did you have a nice time? I love that place you went to, that pasta looked delicious, because they're always looking and they're seeing what I'm doing, which is so, so nice. Went to a concert the other evening and all my clients popped up being like, oh, have the best time, oh my god, I'm going to that concert next week. And it's just really, really nice, and it builds such a nice friendly client relationship where it doesn't feel so professional. Obviously there are professional boundaries, etc., but it gives you a chance to have a chit chat as well.
100%, right? I think I was saying the other day, accountants, like, these are people who are coming to you and putting a lot of trust in you from, yes, a compliance and a regulatory standpoint to make sure they're not getting in trouble. But actually, a lot of them, when you're having those initial discovery calls, I don't know many firms that don't kind of ask, why did you set up your business? What is it that you're looking to achieve, right? And for most people, it isn't that they really wanted to set up a business, it's that they wanted more time, more freedom, whatever it was. And actually, they're trusting you guys to help get them there. And I think the more open that can be, if you can create a safe and inclusive space that they can be themselves, that they can be really open, that they can feel like they can trust you, I think you're only going to get better results all around, both for you and what you're looking to achieve, but also for them, right?
100%. And like it is fostering those really important client relationships, because that's what helps retention. So I know my clients, I WhatsApp them personally. That's how we communicate, because they're not really the email type of gals. And that's great. And I can check in with them every week if I need to. I have calls every month, like just a quick 20-minute chit chat to make sure they're all okay. Keep them like updated on any progress, whether that be a tax return, annual accounts, that anything like that. And it also gives them a chance to ask questions.
Definitely.
So that's important. They keep them in sometimes all month. And I go, you have my number. You can just call me or text me. They go, no, no, I didn't want to. You were very busy, I saw on Instagram. So like, don't feel like you need to, I didn't want to ruin like your holiday, and it's fine and it's lovely. But it's important to have those regular touch points as well, just so they feel like they're valued as a client.
Definitely, definitely. A reminder to anyone, pop questions in the Q&A as well. But I think on what you're saying there, I think one of the things that people give as like a pushback as people start to scale is, well, that's not scalable. I can't speak to all my clients all the time. And I think it's about leveraging things like social media, like we said, to have those touch points. And I think it's about building the systems and processes to make those kind of things scalable, right? So that you can say, actually, we can still have these touch points, but I'm going to build a resource bank of videos that are going to answer a lot of your questions. I'm going to build articles that are going to answer your questions and blog posts and things like that, so that people can still get that information where they need it. Yes, it might mean that they get a response in 2 days instead of 1 day, or whatever that looks like. But I think it's, like you say, it's building all of that so that they can feel connected to you ultimately.
Exactly. And especially what you said about answering their questions earlier. I think Rachel Harris does it as well, but it's something that I started doing is when they ask you a question, actually you make a video on it, because 9 times out of 10 another client will ask you it. And then usually what I do is I just send them the link to the video I've already done before, which answers their question, which is quite nice. And it's stuff like, oh, what common business expenses are there? I go, oh, I just did an Instagram post on that. Let me send that to you. And they go, oh my God, that's so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly that. You almost create this like evergreen content, right? I mean, evergreen until HMRC change something, but evergreen content. But conscious of time, what would be your advice for anyone that is watching this thinking, I'm young, I want to start out on my own? What do I do? What would be your number one piece of advice?
Well, I think aside from the number one piece of advice, is make sure that everything legally is in check. So your AML, your ICO, your insurance, etc., etc., because that's really important before you get started anyway. But back to my number one piece of advice is just honestly throw yourself in the deep end. That's what I did. And I've told you about this. People ask me all the time, loads of questions like, oh, did you have a plan? Did you have this? I was so chaotic. I just went one day, I woke up and I was like, right, I'm going to do it. And I just did it. And I chucked myself in the deep end. And then I just learned how to swim, which is obviously not very helpful advice at the end of the day. But it is important just to throw yourself out there and just put yourself out there. Like I've gotten all these amazing opportunities from so many wonderful people just because I've put myself out there and haven't been afraid to just put myself on social media or put myself on Instagram or LinkedIn and talk about things. And also, when you talk about personal things, I don't talk about like breakups or traumatic events or anything, but I talk about my dyslexia and how difficult that's been in my apprenticeship and being a young person in finance and things like that. Again, people find that relatable, and that's really important.
Amazing. Gonna jump into questions. We've got 2 here for you. So the first is a very lovely one with a nice comment that says, congrats, Grace. Sounds like you are absolutely a rising star. I'd be super interested to understand the scaling of your business after 6 months. How did you set realistic goals in terms of getting new clients? Did you aim for a certain number of clients, or was it a revenue target?
For me, at the beginning, it was a revenue target. So obviously, I just quit my corporate job. So for me, it was actually within a year, I wanted to hit my corporate income. And I was very lucky and privileged to be able to do that in a few months. So it went from a revenue target, thank you, to now it's again just another revenue target. I'm not too bothered about clients. Just in the sense that obviously some have bigger fees than others, some take up more time than others. So at the end of the day, for me, it's more revenue targets than client targets.
Absolutely. And I think that's in line with a lot of the conversations I'm having at the moment. Actually, a lot of firms are trying to scale back the number of clients and increase the fees on them, actually, so that they can do that deeper work with them, which is amazing. And then another question, which is, what has been the biggest challenge in running an accountancy practice so far?
I think challenge is just um I think one of them has been being quite young. And so just from my personal experience, I find it quite difficult to be able to relate to people. Just because personally, all of my friends at university, some of them are graduating now, some of them are still in. And so I'm running a firm. And so that's quite difficult in itself to be relatable to my friends and also to be relatable to the other people in the industry, because 9 times out of 10, they are significantly older than me. And so that relatability part has been quite difficult in my personal life. But running a firm, it's like running any business. It's learning to take time from myself. I'm terrible at having work-life balance because I really wanted this to work. And so I put all my time and all my energy into it so it would grow, which it has, and I'm very thankful for it. But now I'm like, okay, well, let me put small things in place that I can actually look after myself and not get as exhausted, and pick what things are important to me and learn to say no to things that I don't particularly want to do.
100%. And I think that's what has made you so relatable, is that transparency of, actually, I'm trying to get this off the ground, and that's meant I've put 110% into this and sacrificed a lot of things. And now you're at a point, like you say, where actually that income has been replaced. You can now start thinking about how you build this a little bit more sustainably moving forward.
Yeah.
A huge thank you to you, Grace, for joining us today, and thank you to everyone that has joined in and watched. If people would like to keep up with you, where can they find you? Where can they keep an eye on you moving forward?
You can find me everywhere because I'm all around. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, under Grace Hardy. There's a nice picture of me with a blue background. I'm on Instagram. So my firm's Instagram is Hardy Accounting, and my personal Instagram is Grace_Hardy_. And my TikTok is Hardy.accounting. If you could take a shot for every time I said Hardy, I'd be on the floor. But that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you very much. As a reminder, we do have one more of these next Tuesday at 4 p.m. with Ariana from Majors Accounting. Look forward to seeing many of you there, hopefully. But again, Grace, you're an absolute superstar. Thank you so much for joining us, and take care.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Bye.